Hi students, in this video we're going to be looking at the first stage of designing our aeroplane. Specifically, we're going to be designing the body, so that's this part through here and the tail end. So we're going to begin with a new SketchUp model. Now remember, every new SketchUp model, the first things you should always do is configure your environment, and most importantly there is to check that you are using the correct measurements. So we come over to the right hand side to the information icon. We make sure that we are looking in the length and units. So if it's not already chosen, expand it out and make sure you are using the millimeter format and at least one decimal place. You don't need to go to several, just one decimal place of accuracy. And at that point, you can close that out of the way. And then the second thing I do is remove the little person because we don't need them. And finally, save your work. So again, save it to your OneDrive. You can always say yes to that purge option and make sure you name it properly. And in our case, it's your last name, then your first name, do the capitals properly. And then this is an aeroplane, and that's what we're going to call this piece of work. So last name, first name, and then aeroplane. And save that. And we are ready to proceed. Remember, if you don't set those measurements, everything you do from here on is going to end up being wasted, and you're going to have to go back and restart it anyway. So be really certain you have your measurements in millimeters with 0.0 precision. Rightio. We are planning to create a template for our work. So we're not going to start by actually drawing a full 3D model. We will get to that later, but we're going to draw the flat template. Because our intention is to be able to take it from the computer, print it out onto some paper, and then cut that out and lay it on top of the actual material that we're going to use so we can get the exact shape onto that piece of wood in this case. Okay, so to do that, we're going to do something that we may not have done in other tutorials so far, and is that we're going to change the view. So we have certainly seen how we can rotate in our space. So, if I hold down my middle mouse button, I can rotate, or I can use the tools over on the side here. But instead of trying to guess exactly what looking straight down means, I'm going to use a built-in camera mode. So I'm going to come across here to the right-hand side again to this little icon that looks like one of those movie clappers you might have seen in old movies. It's called Scenes, and I'm going to click on that. And I'm looking for this section, the standard views. Now again, it might be folded up, so if it is, just unfold it. And I want to go to the top views, looking straight down. I also have the other views, so if you think about, say, a cube or a dice, this is all the different sides of it. So you've got the top and the bottom, the left, the right, the front, the back, and you've also got this special view called ISO, which is essentially what we are in here, slightly angled from the front. Okay, so if you get lost, you can always sort of come back to the ISO view. But we want to go to this top view, which they also call plan view, quite conveniently. So let's click on that, and we're now looking straight down. So we can pop this out of the way, and we are ready to draw. Now, the piece of material that you're going to be using is what we want to replicate here. And it's going to be a piece of material that's 200 millimeters long, and 70 millimeters wide. So we're going to start, like we do most things, by replicating that. We're going to use our rectangle tool to draw a rectangle, roughly the right shape. Let go of our mouse, remember, and then immediately type our measurements in. So 200, 70. Press enter or return, and our piece has been resized to those exact measurements. We're now going to zoom in. So again, preferably with your scroll wheel on your mouse. If you're not using a mouse, again, you need to use the tools on the side, just so we can see this piece nice and close. All right, the next thing we are going to do is put in some limitations or some constraints on our material, some things that we're not allowed to change. And we're going to do that with our tape measure, and the tape measure is going to draw what we call construction lines. And we've seen those before. They're those dotted lines that we can use to put temporary measurements on our work. So let's get our tape measure, And I'm going to explain what each of these is for as we go along. So for now, just follow along and make them, but I'll explain why they're important as we go. So our first construction line is going to be a horizontal line across. So we get that by coming up to our top line, dragging straight down any amount. It doesn't matter to begin with. We let go and we type in the value 20 because we want a 20 millimeter line from the top. So there is our first construction line. The second one is going to be from the left-hand side. Again, drag it in from there. Any amount doesn't matter. And then let's type in 120. So we end up with a construction line over here. The third construction line we need is actually going to be based from this line. So we're actually going to start from that construction line and go to our left. Again, any amount doesn't matter. And type in the value 70. So this horizontal construction line is 20 millimeters from the top. This construction line here is 120 millimeters from the left-hand side. And this third construction line is actually 70 millimeters to the left from our first construction line here. So you should have something that looks the same. Now, what are these important for? What are they needed for? So this part here, this rectangle, if you like, is going to be the tail of our aeroplane. We are not allowed to cut into this shape at all, otherwise our plane won't end up with a tail. So that's why we have this 20 millimeters from the top and this line 120 from the front, if you like. So this left is going to be our front, and that says, hey, you can't cut any of this out. This gap between these two vertical construction lines, this 70 millimeters, allows the space for our wings to sit on top. So again, we don't want to be editing or cutting any of this out because then there won't be a flat surface for our wings to join onto later on. So that's a very important space as well. Otherwise, the rest of it essentially is space that we can modify, that we can cut the shape of our aeroplane's body. So let's now have a look at how we might go about that. So I'm actually going to start by taking my pencil and I'm going to draw this bottom part of the tail, this part that I'm not allowed to cut. So I'm simply going to go from where the construction line joins on this right-hand edge to where the two construction lines join here and draw a straight line, just to make sure I know that I can't cut that space. I don't want to cut anything in here, so what I might do is draw a line that goes down there. And then I might draw another line that goes down there. And then I might draw a line that goes there. It's a very sharp aeroplane, but technically it's correct. If I took away, by rubbing out all these extra parts that I don't need now, you can see the shape of our aeroplane. There is the tail that we're not allowed to get rid of. There is the 70 millimeter space for the wings to sit on top of, and it has a shape that kind of looks like the body of an aeroplane. Now, I'm not very happy with that personally, and again, this is the power of editing on a computer, is I can easily go, no, don't like that. Let's undo those changes, get back to something that we can start from, and I don't have to go and get a new piece of paper or a new template and start from fresh. I can just make modifications. So what about some curves instead? I'm going to use my favorite 2-point arc. I've talked about that many times in other classes, and I'm going to instead draw some nice arcs or some curves in this space down here. Making sure that I don't go outside the material, because of course I can't add extra material, but I might go with something that looks a bit more like this. Same as before, once I've got a full shape that goes all the way around, take my rubber and rub out the extra parts that I don't need. And there is a different shaped aeroplane. I think that looks a little bit nicer. But I still might not be happy, and I might want to undo and go back and make more changes. You can certainly combine straight lines along with curves. You don't have to do everything, either all curves or all straight lines. You can use any tools you like to get the shaping that you want. So long as you keep this tail piece there, and you keep this flat 70 millimeters across the top, so that you have somewhere for your wings. I don't need you to cut holes in it, so we don't need to cut windows, for example, or doors. That's not part of this process, and it's going to be very hard to actually do. We're just looking for an outside shape. You can also, of course, rub out the construction lines because we don't need those, and we have our finished design. Save regularly, as we always do, and that is essentially the process for creating the shape of our aeroplane body. The next video is going to be a fairly quick one where I'm going to show you how to then print this so that you can actually get it onto a real piece of paper that we can cut out and put on a piece of work. But go and have a go at that. You might even want to design 4 or 5 different shapes and that later on decide which one you like best. There's nothing stopping you from creating several of these so that you can have options when it comes time to picking one. But let's end it there and we'll come back for the next video.